I got bored today, so I dug out one of my projects that sort of I thought about a long time ago and haven't really done much on it, and thought, as I haven't done a video in a while, I'd do one. What it is a small vehicle mounted tyre compressor. You can't see with the light, but it's marked up as a Smiths Maxfield tyre pump. But I've done some research online. I can't find out what it was fitted to. There were very similar ones that were fitted to Bedford lorries, but I can't work out what this one is off. I rescued it off the scrap pile, so decided better than it going back on scrap, I'm going to turn it into a small engine. Because why not? What I've done so far, rounded off these corners, which, because they hit on the flywheel that I'm going to use, but I've just realised that's a mistake. It's still going to be a pain, so that's going to be all cut back to that front level there. New holes drilled there, and obviously the other side. What I've mostly been working on today is, it won't come out at the moment. It's the problem with holding a camera. Is the crankshaft. Originally this came along here, it's got a journal there with the grooves the oil ways. Came up to the end of that keyway and then stuck out to about there with a 1/2" BSF thread. What I've done is I've cut the crankshaft off a scrap Villiers Mark 12, bored it, threaded it 1/2" BSF, screwed it on there, welded round, and I've turned and ground it back to the same size as that. It isn't perfect, but for the application of this engine it will do. Only problem, let's see if I can turn this light off. Yeah, there we go. I've had to relieve that slightly there because as I turned it down, I had to recut the taper, which moved the flywheel slightly further back, but it's no big issue. Really nice thing with this engine is as it gets oil in to lubricate this journal, which I'll show you in a minute, the crankshaft is actually drilled so the oil will travel all the way up there, lubricate the big end as well. So I shouldn't really have to run much oil in the sump. Hopefully most of it will come from this bung that was in the top there. All round the crankcase is hollow. I've got to blank up that hole that you can see just there. Then that whole thing will fill up with oil and come into there's a hole drilled into the bearing, and there's an oil seal inside that brass piece there, so it won't flood the crankcase with oil. All I intend doing is filling that up with oil and then having a drip feed oiler to replenish it, really. Right, that's that so far. I've also taken Villiers Mark 12 flywheel, turned it down to smooth it off a bit. I was wandering through Tesco's, I can't remember what I was looking for last night, but I found large cast iron weights for dumbbells or whatever. They were selling dirt cheap, really, so I planned to find one that was a bit bigger than that diameter, turn it down to size and just screw it inside. Paint all up in there, make it look quite nice hopefully. It will then all bolt onto the original boss that comes off this Villiers flywheel, and the nut that will probably be turned down just to lock it all in place. I was hoping to keep that all as one unit, but because of the clearance issues of having to recut the taper on that crankshaft, that didn't happen. Next little conundrum I had was trying to work out how to do. Initially I was going to make it two-stroke, and what I was going to do is simply use an atmospheric intake valve at the top of the cylinder and just drill exhaust holes round basically this bottom fin to make it a uniflow two-stroke, but just drilling the holes around that fin seemed sort of a bit bodgy to me. I didn't really like the idea of it. So I've changed my mind and I'm going to go for a 4-stroke engine. This is the cylinder head. I've got a sort of conventional looking valve that fits in there, which will be the exhaust valve. Then in here, it originally had a ball bearing and a spring just as a one-way valve. I'm unsure what to do for the intake. It will definitely be atmospheric. What I'm thinking at the moment is just put a non-return valve on there, and hopefully that will work quite well as the intake valve. This blanking bolt in the top there will be, not quite sure what I'll do that yet. I'll probably just drill and thread it for a little 10mm spark plug. Exhaust valve cage, I'll just mill around that ring there, mill it flat, make up a cage using sort of a pipe fitting or a home hacked out piece, and then just clamp it down with a bolt through each of those 4 things, and sort of a clamp just to lock it all down, probably with a copper washer in there to just keep it sealed. And that'll be the exhaust. Just use the original cast iron guide. I might bush it and put bronze or brass in, but I don't really see much need at the moment. Only issue we've got is there isn't much combustion space, but if I run with the ball bearing non-return valve for the intake idea, hopefully just going up there and along through that bit of pipe will just provide the combustion chamber. If not, I'll have to skim this, recut the seat, and a bit of a faff I don't really want to have to do, but we will see. But yes, my biggest conundrum was how to operate the valves, or the valve should I say. I've come up with an ingenious solution. I had this pair of several of these gears laying around. They came in a box of bits that came on my lathe. They definitely don't fit my lathe, so I've got no use for them. I found this one and this one, which are nice because it's a 16 and 32 tooth, so provides perfect 2-to-1 reduction for the cam. The issue was driving them. I was going to mount them round this side, sort of behind the flywheel, but with the flywheel on there's just not enough space. So I thought about trying to use these 2 lugs here, which is where the original gear that drove the pump off the, I assume, gearbox or whatever it was mounted on, fitted. Happens to be exactly the right size for the bore of the bigger gear, but then with the smaller gear on the crankshaft, hang on, I'm just going to put this down and try and semi-assemble it. With that gear on there, let me just try to turn the light on again, see if that helps. Yeah, you can see better now. With that gear on there, there's obviously, they don't mesh, there's quite a big old gap between them. Pulled another one out of the box, right sort of size for an idler, which will hopefully just sit in there nicely. Yeah. Oh, it's a pain trying to do this with one hand. And then, hang on. Let me try and, that's the problem with trying to film things, it's a right pain in the backside to actually hold them. And that will turn everything nicely. Cam will just be screwed onto the side here with elongated holes, so I can vary the valve timing, or, well, yeah, vary the timing. What I plan to do is make up a sort of triangular shaped bronze plate, fairly thick, that will have this shaft go through one hole, crankshaft through another hole, and the third shaft will hold this idler gear in position, because actually trying to bore through the casting and put a shaft in would be virtually impossible. Yeah, so that's progress at the moment, really. It's a nicely built little thing. I assume it's probably 40s or 50s military or something. proper bronze connecting rod and everything. It's nice, quality little thing. Proper piston rings on it as well, which I'll try and show you. Yeah, proper piston rings. So it should, if I can get everything set up nicely, run quite well. Just got that little hole in there to blank off. I'll probably just put a BSP blanking plug in there if I can get some taps. And yeah, it'll be a nice little engine. Only thing I did forget to mention is this, which is the original lever that engaged the gear that ran it from the gearbox. Plan is to use this and run the push rod up through that hole, so it all looks quite stock, because it exits the casting quite nicely at the top there. So the push rod will come out of there, and it will should just look quite proper. We'll see. I've got to make, next job is really to make a housing to bolt onto that round bit at the front there, which will hold a support bearing for the front of the crankshaft. Right, I think that's all for this video. It probably won't happen very quickly, but I'll keep you updated as I do bits and pieces. Thanks for watching.